length of days is in her right hand. Is Hank telling us that Jesus was our genderqueer icon? I had no idea. And I don't think Hank is the type of person who would be supportive of that. Yes, Queen Jesus, yes. I'm gonna get smited. If I suddenly stop uploading videos, it's because I was smited by God for my blasphemy. No, 5 more years. What the fuck? So, listening back to my footage, I noticed it's very clear, one, when I'm scratching my cat, so I apologize for that noise throughout the video, and then I also forgot to turn off my... There it goes. I also forgot that I probably should have turned off my air conditioning before I started, because that's also very loud and very noticeable while it's on, so I'm sorry. That's something I'll try to remember and do better for future videos. Yeah. I wore these extensions to make me feel more confident, and I feel like they are doing the opposite. That, or I just look whack in the viewfinder. We'll see how this goes. Hopefully I don't have to have a lot of jump cuts. We'll see. When I started my channel, it was more of a therapeutic exercise for me. It was really helpful in venting frustrations I had post leaving evangelical and fundamental Christianity. I didn't really do things the right way. I didn't start with a backlog of videos. Instead, I would make them week to week. So I would record and edit and post all the same week. So when life got busy or difficult, I was just not able to put a video out. And when I started my channel, it was in a season of being unemployed. So as soon as I got a job, I stopped making videos. I often didn't script. Instead, I would just record my actions or thoughts in the moment. So much has happened in my life and in the world since the last video I posted. I've gotten to know and understand myself a lot better. One of the biggest things was realizing that my treatment-resistant depression wasn't depression at all, but severe autistic burnout. So the reason that medication after medication after medication, which all of that started while I was still a Christian, didn't work for me was because I wasn't having a brain chemistry problem. I was having an autism problem from just a lifetime of masking and being the person I thought I had to be based off of the pressure of others. And so after a lot of time, a lot of additional therapy, a wonderful group therapy with a lot of other just fantastic autistic women, and several surgeries, I am finally not related to the autism. That I don't think there's any surgeries for that. But I'm finally back, and I feel like I'm on the upswing of really bad autistic burnout, and I'm ready to share again. There's so much that I just have that I feel like I want to talk about and I need to talk about, or I see happening in the world and more people should be talking about it. You may have noticed that I have switched up my format. I'm not using a little sprite anymore to represent myself. I didn't lie. I did have purple hair at the time. However, when I got that before mentioned job, I ended up having a mental breakdown and shaving my hair. So that's where the purple went. I am really excited to get back to making videos. I'm very nervous to have my face on here because I'm very much not my type. So I don't, plus body dysmorphia, I don't know if I'll have a great time having to look at my face for hours while editing, but we'll see. I was always very nervous about putting my face out there because I've always, from my observation, it seems like the more attractive a YouTuber is, the more successful they are, and I've never really considered myself to be attractive. I don't know if that's just being realistic or if that's body dysmorphia. So I started out really making those videos commenting on pastors, correcting crazy theology, and I still will probably do things in that vein, but with the way the world has gone, especially in the United States where I live, there really isn't a separation between evangelical Christianity and politics anymore. Maybe there hasn't been for a long time, and I was just in denial or blind to it. I saw it happening a little bit, but now it's just so... cat hair. Now it's just so glaringly obvious, which... if I seem to be moving around weird, it's because I've got a cute purring cat on my lap. He likes to keep me company. He's a very snuggly boy. There's his tail. So just because of how entrenched evangelical Christianity is into politics now, it's impossible to interact with Christian content without dipping into politics or it becoming political. If someone would have told me that I'd be making, political type content on the web, I would have laughed it off. But now I can't imagine staying quiet on a lot of these topics. Even though my platform is very small, I feel irresponsible not using it. And I hope you'll stay with me during this transition. I hope this community will grow, and I thank you for your support. If you want to keep following me on this, I would, graciously ask that you like and subscribe. I've heard that if you click the share button and copy the link, you don't have to send it anywhere. It kind of tricks YouTube into thinking you're sharing my video, and then it's going to push it out to more people. So I would appreciate that as well. I think now, though, what I want to do more than anything is just do things that facilitate growing and building community. I think a lot of Christians who leave the faith, they will deconstruct, but then there's not necessarily reconstructing that happens after. And I'm not talking reconstruction as in reconstructing your Christian faith, but especially for people like me, who my faith had been a huge part of my personality. It was the most important thing to me because I believed the Bible wholeheartedly. And when you do that and you see verses about going into the world and making disciples of all nations, you take that seriously. And I did. So I was very invested in sharing the gospel and trying to make disciples because I was worried about the souls of everyone around me. And it often, at the time, would even irk me at how, dead and passive other Christians were because they were reading the same book as me, but they just didn't seem to have the same investment in saving the lost. So having so much of who I was and my motivations in life so entrenched in Christian doctrine and theology, I did kind of have to reconstruct myself, figure out who I was, what my motivations were, what I wanted. And something that I felt very lacking in after leaving the church was community, because before, my community was the church. And so it took time for me to kind of look around and find replacements for that. The first thing I did after a while, I joined a women's choir in the area that was auditioned, just because I used to like lead worship and stuff. I did a lot of singing, and I very much missed that. And so I started out there. I joined that women's chorus, and that was really nice community. It was fun to hang out with those girls, and I'm really excited for the next season to be starting up of that. And then I started just kind of examining, what are the things that I enjoy doing. And I ended up getting involved in the community theater scene in my area, which luckily I'm in a place where there's a lot of options for that. So I've been making friends there, participating in musicals. I also perform for a murder mystery show, which is a lot of fun. And most recently, I've started hanging out with my local chapter of humanists. So I remember when I was a Christian, I had quite a negative view of humanists just because they were atheists. But now that I'm an atheist, I started, re-exploring humanism and humanist values. And so I've started to hang out with my local chapter of humanists in the area, which it's been so refreshing to find like-minded people who care about other people and have really great ethics and values, and to be able to find and build that ethical framework that has nothing to do with religion, which in the past, I had this feeling that it's like, oh, well, you can't have morality without, God. But then you look at the Bible, and the overall morality in it is shit unless you're cherry picking. So it's just very, very refreshing to find a value framework that isn't reliant on a God who makes very questionable choices and is focused on human flourishing and taking care of others. Because even though I, at the time, felt that I was basing my ethics and values on Christianity when I was a Christian, I still feel a lot of the same ways. I still feel like taking care of people is important, that we should be helping the people who are struggling and not implementing policies that make life harder for them. I always was very skeptical of the system as it was, and the way it just continued to trample the downtrodden and the people, on the lowest rung of the social ladder, and the way it just kept implementing policies that continued to make life harder for people instead of uplifting them and helping them. And it's so frustrating to see society start to revert with new policies. Just the way that people are getting disenfranchised. And some of the stuff is very, very scary. There are a lot of things that are just absolutely horrifying. And some of them affect me personally. I think the biggest example is RFK and his really, really wrong views about autism. Yes, there are a lot of people who are autistic who don't look and present in the way that I do, but that doesn't make me not autistic. And the just the overall threat that's implicit in RFK being in control, because this guy has a chapter in his book about how he thinks, miasma theory is more valid than believing in, viruses and bacteria.
Bobby often denies germ theory, attempting to drag us back to the 1800s. Yes, your ears are working just fine. The guy running HHS thinks germs might not cause disease. This is straight out of his 2021 garbage ghost-written book in a section titled Miasma versus Germ Theory, which is found in Chapter 9, The White Man's Burden, and it's fucking bananas. It's like a chemist saying atoms don't exist. Indeed, Bobby's claim that germs are no big deal comes from this book, which serves no purpose other than elevating his celebrity among science deniers, where he essentially rejects germ theory, a cornerstone of modern medicine, and pushes a warped mixture of obsolete, long discredited models like miasma theory and terrain theory, claiming that diseases come from poor nutrition and toxins, not germs. He literally says germ theory mimics demon possession. Are you listening? This is the guy overseeing the CDC.
Yikes. He also thinks it would be a really great idea to, take everybody off of their mental type medications and throw them on a farm to work the land. And if that's not weird and slavery, I'm not sure what it is. And so, this time if I disappear again, you can probably just assume that I got sent to the farm. Either to work the land or to get put down, who knows. One of my favorite channels recently is Durante Lamar. His content is very much focused on reconstruction and building community, and I relate to him a lot because he's also neurodivergent and he also used to be a pastor. It's a lot of fun because it feels like listening to a preacher. Instead of the preaching being very prescriptive, like this is what the Bible says, so this is how you should live, his preaching is more the type that makes me think and question and really unpack and examine things in a way that I really appreciate. Because when I'm listening to it, I don't feel like I'm being, babied or spoken down to, but I always leave thinking about, what are things that I can do to build community? How am I approaching life after leaving the church? It makes me think a lot about how negative it can be sometimes, how people after deconstruction, they will abandon that type of gathering or community. And it's something that we as humans, I think, just intrinsically, evolutionarily crave from being a social species. And there's a lot of good in not forgoing that type of thing altogether, but finding new ways to have that connection, that community, and building that type of support. And I think right now, it's more important than ever. I'm going to share a quote here from the president of the humanists in my area that he shared at the No Kings rally.
Humanists believe the best answers to fear, division, and rising authoritarianism aren't violence or vengeance. They're community building, critical thinking, and the courage and freedom to openly question authority.
And I completely agree with that. I think building community is essential. It is the best defense against fascism and hardship. A good example I have of seeing that in action in my own life was when I was a missionary in India. So in India now, and at the time that I was there, the president of the country is of the Hindu Nationalist Party. And This may sound familiar, but one of his big platforms was getting rid of corruption in the government while simultaneously making it more corrupt. But one of the weird things he did was called demonetization. So he decided that a few of the bills in circulation were just no longer going to be valid. His reason behind this was to hurt people who were wealthy and hoarding those particular bills. But what really happened was it just made life really, really difficult for the common person. Because imagine it this way. Imagine that we are still using cash for everything. We're not really going around swiping cards. And all of the sudden, we get told, okay, all $10 bills and all $20 bills are no longer valid. We will be replacing them with a $30 bill eventually. The bills that you have, you can go into your local bank and have them exchanged for singles in the meantime. Well, the banks weren't ready for that. Neither were the ATMs. And so there was a long period of time where you could maybe go in and have one $20 bill exchanged for singles. There would be long lines at the ATMs, and eventually, the person up front would be like, it's empty. And everybody would just go home for the day. But in that type of environment, how are you supposed to buy food? And the town I lived in, India, was the type that you went and bought the vegetables that you were going to use to cook with that day because they were in the market and they were ripe. They were fresh. Not like in the US grocery store here where everything is picked before it's ready, so it has more time before it goes bad. So very delicious to have things so fresh. Same with the meat. You would go to the butcher who had butchered the chicken that day or the goat that day. No cow. Absolutely no cow where I lived. And so what are you supposed to do in that situation? And luckily, we all got through that time. And the reason we got through that time was because that town was very community oriented. And I had spent my time building community and relationships with the people around me. And so when I would go to my normal vegetable stall, my normal butcher, or my normal convenience store, they knew me. They knew who I was. And they would just keep a tab. They would keep a tab for me and say, we'll all have money again eventually. This will pass. Everything passes. And everybody worked together just beautifully. And we got through that tough time. And eventually the goofy new bills came out. And the ATMs were full again. And life continued. Everyone settled and paid off their various tabs or debts. Same thing even for the restaurants at the time. If you had kind of built up those relationships with those people, which if you were living in the area was not hard to do because it was a very relational place. You would have had to make an effort to not connect with people, essentially. And that made it so much easier to get through what would have been a very, very difficult time. And we're going to need that type of community here. It's been really, really great to see the ways it has occurred already here and there, the way people are protecting and taking care of their neighbors. And if anything, I want to be making content that encourages people to be building community where they're at. And this doesn't have to be specifically humanist communities or secular communities. Just build community with people who share interests with you. Get invested in other people's lives. And just to clarify, I am very, very introverted. I like spending a lot of alone time, and being autistic, I need a lot of alone time. But there's still something very special about human connection. And we aren't even really human outside of the context of other humans. And so there's just something really special that happens when you have community, especially community that really sees you and understands who you are. And so when I've entered into communities now, I'm not shy about who I am and that I have autism. And so I set the expectation with them very early that I'm not going to be forcing a lot of eye contact. Doing that was something I did when I masked, but it actually makes it more difficult for me to listen to people when I'm focused on making eye contact and focusing on, am I making all the right expressions? Am I doing enough like nodding or am I mirroring their body language enough? And so it's been helpful to be upfront about those sorts of things. And when people aren't okay with that, I realize this is not the space or community for me. But what I've found is when I have been very open and vulnerable about those things, I've found a lot of love and acceptance, even especially in theater, even a lot of, oh, me too, when I share that I'm autistic. And there's just this beautiful thing that happens where you and that other person just instantly stop masking and the flow of conversation completely changes. All of the odd small talk is dropped, and all of a sudden you're just both back and forth dumping about special interests. And there's just something so beautiful about that type of connection, and I think it just edifies you. It helps you become a better you. And it opens your eyes to the struggles that other people have. It opens you to new perspectives. And so even if, like me, you're introverted and you like to spend a lot of time alone, I still do recommend that you find a community to be a part of. Maybe even a community of other introverts who sometimes you just all get together and sit quietly doing your own things. I think there's power in that type of connection. And even more so when things get tough and hard, you have a support system and you have people who you are supporting when they are going through tough times. And I think it's just such a wonderfully human thing to do. A lot of it is doing what I felt was the core of Christian values. But clearly, the evangelical church disagrees. I would love everybody's input. If there is specific content that you'd be interested in seeing, please let me know. I know this video was pretty rambly. I did write myself a little bit of a script, but I am not good at following them. The only time I'm good at following a script is when I'm acting and I'm portraying a role. I realize that might come as a little bit of a surprise because of my fucking awkward delivery. But for whatever reason, as part of my autism, I am personally just extremely awkward. But if you give me a defined role to play, I can do that very well. But I didn't want to construct an entire role and personality for this. Maybe I will get more comfortable as time goes on, but right now a lot of my awkwardness and pauses and umming and whatever are partially because I keep seeing my face in the viewfinder and it's distracting, maybe a little, causes a little bit of dissociation, a bit, unfortunately. But I mean, I don't know, maybe, it seems to me, watching content, that YouTube is starting to transition back into more authentic kind of, content, instead of the big bombastic content that had been on its way to. And I wanted to be a part of that more just calm, authentic type setting without a lot of pretense or overproduction. I'm still hoping to do some of the little like visual gags that I used to do, just because I like to edit them. It's a lot of fun, and I like practicing around with the comedic timing in those. But especially this video, it is just kind of more awkward and rambly because, like I said, I did write a bit of a script, but as soon as I started filming, I realized I hated the script, and I've just mostly used it as a guideline. So because of that, it isn't very polished. It probably could have been more polished, but I don't know if I want polished to be my thing, if that makes sense. I am excited for this background. This bit here is chalkboard, and I got myself some fun chalk markers, so maybe you'll see my very amateur doodles in the future, so that'll be fun. And so let me know, do you want more Sunday scaries? Do you want more just rambly, vulnerable type content? Do you want me to talk about any specific topics? Do you want me to just revisit and talk about my deconstruction again, now that I'm kind of on the other side and reconstructing now? Ultimately, I just really want to go back to making videos. I know I'm not the best or most talented at it, but I do really enjoy the editing process. Hopefully I haven't ruined that for myself by using my face now, but we'll see. Hopefully I will have done this right, and by the time this comes out, I'll actually have a few other videos made and try to do the correct backlog so that I don't end up panicking trying to make things week to week. But yeah, I think that's all. Wrapping things up isn't my strong suit. So I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Bye. I am very much working on accepting imperfection, so even though I am so tempted to start over and re-record the whole thing, I'm not gonna.